these videos, we are going to start learning about addition and subtraction in assembly code. So we're going to start having a bit more functionality to our code than just inputting and outputting, which is very exciting. So let's look at a few examples. So we've got two new mnemonics. We've got add and sub, which stand for addition and subtraction. So add will add a value to whatever is already in the accumulator, and then the result gets put into the accumulator. And then subtract subtracts a value from the value in the accumulator, also putting the result in the accumulator. So let's look at a few examples to see how this actually works. So in this first one, we've got input. Great. So we input a value, and that will get stored into our accumulator. We add 1. Now notice we've spelled out 1, O-N-E, and that's because we've created a variable 1 down at the bottom, and we've given it value 1. So 1.1 will say, that's like in Python, creating a variable 1 and then storing it, storing the value 1 in that variable. So what this allows us to do is add on a constant to our input. So if we've got input, let's start from here on line 1. So we input and we've got 9 in our accumulator. All right. When we add 1, it's going to add this 1, because that's our variable, to whatever's already in the accumulator. Well, 9 is already in the accumulator, so it adds 1. And then on line 3 output, we'll output whatever's in the accumulator, which is 10, and then it halts. So what this program does is it inputs a value, it adds 1 to it, and it outputs that. So it's kind of like printing the input plus 1. Let's look at another one. So here we've got, we input a value, great. We store that value in A, okay. So if we input 9, we store 9 in A, and then we input another value, 3, and we subtract A. So subtracting A is going to subtract from whatever is in our accumulator. It's going to subtract A from that number. So 3 take away 9 is negative 6. When we output, it's going to output whatever's in our accumulator, negative 6, and then it halts. Okay. Now one more example. Well, let's go back actually. So this one did like the second number take away the first number, and this next example is going to do the first take away the second. So it's a lot longer notice, because we've got to think about how we load these values into the accumulator. So we input a value, we store that in variable A. We input another value, which we store in variable B. But because we want to do the first minus the second, we've got to, I've just noticed a mistake here. These should be A and B, not X and Y. We've got to store, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Right, when we load A, we need to load that back into the accumulator so that we can take the second away from it, because otherwise it would be the second one in the accumulator. So we load our first variable back into the accumulator, we subtract the second one from it, and then we output and halt. So assuming that X is A and Y is B, definitely need to fix that. We've got load input 5 stored in A, input 4 stored in B, and then we load A back into our accumulator, or X in this case. We subtract Y, which gives us 1, and then when we output, it's going to output that 1 from our accumulator. Great, let's now do one of the level 3 harder questions, because we've done some of the easier ones previously, and just to give you an idea of like how we can use load and store with these add and sub commands. So our goal here is to read 3 inputs, we'll call them A, B, and C, and then we need to compute A plus B take away C and output the result. So for example, 2 plus 5 is 7, take away 3 is 4. So if those are our inputs, we should get 4. So let's start off by reading these 3 inputs, A, B, and C. So input, store A, input, store B, and then input, store C. And hopefully you started to recognize this pattern a bit. Let's go ahead and create those variables. So A dat, B dat, and C dat. Okay. Now, I need to compute A plus B take away C. So let's just do it in the order it's given. And you'll find with some of these harder questions, there are multiple ways to do them. But let's go ahead and start with this. So we need to load A, and we need to add B. And let's go ahead and stop there and just see what our result is so we can see how we're getting on. So if we do 2, 5, and 3, we've got 2, 5, and 3 stored in A, B, C. And then if I load A, so on line 7, I'm loading A, which was 2. And then on line 8, when I add B, that was 5. So 2 plus 5 is 7. So that's worked well. So notice, in my accumulator right now, at this moment, I have 7, which is perfect. Because now, all I need to do, I've got my A plus B in the accumulator. I don't need to store it in a separate variable or anything. And now, I can take away C. So here, I'm just going to do sub C. And let's try to run that code again. So we've got 2, 5, 3. And notice we've got 4. So we loaded 2, which was A. We added 5, which was B. And then when we subtract C, we get 4 in the accumulator, and we can go ahead and output 4. So that's one worked correctly. Some of these will be more complicated. You'll have to store these like provisional results in a temporary variable, but you can see here how we've quite efficiently written this code. We haven't created any unnecessary variables. We've just used what's already in the accumulator and subtracted from that. So let's check our answers. And again, we are good to go.